We are holding on page 8, second paragraph on the page line 11, page Yud base. And we're continuing with what we spoke about, that there's Mispar, as Roiva Yisrael, Roiva goes on the level of Revia, which the Gemara talks about rain, which is water. So there's a Far Ya'akov, which is the idea of dust and earth. And then there's a level of rain, water which is mixed together, just like Adam Rishon was created by the mixture of water and earth, because the vapor that came up from the earth. So that's how you had the level of the earth wet enough, moist enough to be able to knead and create the body of Adam Rishon. So to Yaakov, that Shufre de Yaakov, the beauty of Yaakov is Me'ein Shufre de Adam. So by him also, there's both ideas. There's the level of water and there's the level of earth, and we're going to connect the two types of avodah, the avodah of earth versus water, with also the terms that we spoke about before, about Yaakov being the heel, and the Yud comes all the way down into the heel, versus Yisrael is the level of Rosh. So again, line 11, page Yud base. The idea in the avodah of a person, there's an avodah that's from the perspective of earth. Like we said earlier, that Avraham Avinu was blessed that his children would be like the stars. Yitzchak was like sand. Yaakov was Nizbarach Kafar Ha'aretz. What's the idea of earth? Like Chazal, like we say in davening, my soul should be like dust before all. What's the idea of dust and earth? Like dust and earth, that everybody steps on it. Dust and earth, offer indicates a level of bittul. What does this mean? Mitzvahs, when it comes to a matter of Torah mitzvahs, is bottom you'll say then he becomes nullified and loses his mitzias, meaning she'ein mitzias lats miklal, he's not an independent being for himself whatsoever. Elakol inyani urakli is offer shol of tiyakom mishkan, his entire being is only to be the dust upon which the mishkan was erected upon. Where do we see a pasuk that shows that the mishkan was on top of the dust in the earth? Like it says, ha'offer shoyeh b'karka mishkan. It says in the sugi of Saita, the dust, the earth, that was at the floor of the mishkan. So the mishkan is created and erected on top of the foundation of dust. And what's the idea of Mishkan in our Avodah Shazel? That's the idea that Hashem says, I shall rest and dwell amongst them, within each and every Yid. In general, the Nasa, that's idea of offer as the foundation of Torah mitzvahs. That's what we say, Nasa before Nishma. We will do. Just bittul completely to the mitzvah. He has no independent interest. He has complete acceptance of the yoke of the kingdom of heaven, fulfill the command of the master. Now mitzvahs, that's the general idea of mitzvahs. That fulfilling the mitzvahs is supposed to be not because of how any particular qualities and characteristics that they attain. Let's say the mezuzah is something that protects us or something like that. Not because even the reasons that there are because of the mitzvahs, but rather the offer type of approach is completely I'm doing this completely just because it's Hashem's command. Like the language used in the bracha of all mitzvahs. Not just mitzvahs that are chokim do we use this lashon. Every single mitzvah, we make this baracha. That he sanctified us in his mitzvahs and he commanded us, meaning that we're doing this because Hashem commanded us. This is the general intention of all the mitzvahs. Like the famous expression that the Chazal say, if a person would have been, if a Yid would have been commanded to chop wood, Shagam Oz, top of page Gimel, so then he would do the mitzvah of chopping wood with the same acceptance of the yoke of heaven, with the same passion and vitality like he would do, let's say, the mitzvah of film, because it's not about him, and it's not about his understanding of the reasons of the mitzvahs. It's totally because of his being bottle and subservient to Hashem. So that is the level of offer. That is what we speak about. Mimona afar Yaakov. There's a level of avoid of offer. But we said there's also Roiva Yisrael. Roiva does not just mean seed, like we spoke about at the beginning of the minor, but Roiva also means from the word Ravia, from the water. So he says in the second line on page Gimel, there's a type of service in avodah that's added to the earth. Also the idea of water. And we say, Ein Mayim Ela Toida. That what is water? Water goes on Toida. This type of mixture of offer and mayim, that offer talks about Kabbalah soil, and mayim is talking about Torah, that's just like Nasa and Nishma. We said beforehand, the bittul of offer, that's Nasa, we will do. The Nishma, the hearing and understanding, that's the Torah. Echad Keneged Nasa, Echad Keneged Nishma. There were the two crowns that the Malachim gave to Eden during Matan Torah. One was because they said Nasa, one was because they said Nishma. This means in addition to the idea of the earth. That is, we will do before we will understand. The Nishma is added also the idea of understanding and comprehension, the idea of Nishma that's to be found in Torah. The understanding in Torah, that's the level of water that's added to the earth. And that's why you have, by Yaakov and Yisrael, you have both of them. You have Afar Yaakov and you have Roiva Yisrael. So he says in the second paragraph, line 8, B'chlos in general, in general, this is the difference between the doing of the mitzvahs, the dust of Yaakov, Kipirish Rashi, and Maimer Chazal, like the Rashi explains for the Maimer Chazal, Shekoi ala mitzvah shemekaimim ba'ofer. It's referring to the mitzvahs that they are fulfilling with dust, with earth. Like, for example, how we're not supposed to plow a mixture of two types of animals together. You should not plant a mixture of seeds. There's the dust of the burning ashes of the paraduma, and there's the dust and earth of the saita, etc. So there's a lot of mitzvahs that are involving offer. So offer is symbolic of the idea of mitzvahs. And that's the difference between mitzvahs, limud Torah, the Torah study, Roiva Yisrael. Yet by Oisi Yisrael, that the word Yisrael has in it the letters Roish. Not just because you learn Torah with your head, but because Torah raises up a person to the level of Rosh. Through Torah, a person becomes a level of a head, like it says, Man Malki Rabbanon, who are considered kings. Those are the Rabbanon. So the Chachamim, the learning of Torah, raises a person up to be in the way of a head, to be a king, to be, like it says, that Kesirisa Malkim Anoshim, that you are overpowering, you are above them. The idea behind this is of this these 2 points over here, the mitzvahs versus learning Torah. The performance of mitzvahs is something that has to be done through the actions of a person in matters of this world. He has to do it in this world. As it's known, the story that the Alter Rebbe did not want to be Mekadesh, the new moon, as long as the boat did not stand in the river by the rules of nature. The whole story was being transferred from prison to questioning, or vice versa, and he didn't have yet an opportunity to be in Kadesh Levana. It was by night, and he asked the captain of the boat that was transporting him to stop the boat, and he wouldn't do so, and then miraculously it stopped, and then he told the captain he wants him to stop it himself, not just once it stopped, he made the Kiddush Levana, because mitzvahs have to be done with the rules of nature. So that's the idea of mitzvahs. Mitzvahs are invested and embedded in nature. As opposed to line 18, Torah study is in a different way completely. That it's in a way that, behold, my words are like fire. V'hainu, this means shafilu kasher loimdim Torah lamata v'matzav bilti masim legamri. If a person is studying Torah down here below, even in a completely inappropriate way, so it says, Divrei Torah einu mekablim tumah, the Chazal say. And they bring it from this pasuk, Halokai dvari ke'esh, that the words of Torah are not susceptible to any tumah that the person has upon him while he's studying. Azaya Torah gam k'fi b'fiv shel ploini, even the Torah, the way it's already in the person's mouth, so it's dealing with that person that's in a state of tumah. Harehi ke'esh einu mekabel tumah. The Torah is like fire. That fire is not susceptible to becoming tummy. Why is that so? That Torah is not susceptible to tumah. Kimu shezeu dvari shel Kadosh Baruch Hu. Since this is by word of Hashem, shezeu klolus ha'inyan sha'Torah memayla mata. That's the general idea, that Torah is amshacha, coming from above to below. Like we say, Asher Bachar Banum Kol Ha'amim, the one who chose us from all the nations. V'nos alon Torah, so He gave us His Torah. Hainu sha'Torah shaloi nas la'Kadosh Baruch Hu l'bnei Yisrael. The Torah, Hashem's Torah, Hashem gave to the Yidden the way the Yidden find themselves down here below in a deep pit. Needs to be the joining of both extremes. Even though Torah is lamata, it's something that Eibishter brought down from above to below. That's the bringing of both extremes together, that even though it's coming from above, but the Torah study has to bring to action. And in what we were talking about before, that in the creation of Adam Rishon, you needed to have water and earth together. That's like when the creation of Adam Rishon, which was similar to Ya'akov, there had to be the mixture of both water and earth. In other words, you needed to have the earth, which is Nasa. We will do together what we will understand. And then, on top of page Yudaled, Shaldeis and Nasa, in the Mispar Roiva Yisrael. Then it becomes the idea of the number of Roiva Yisrael, as we will explain what this means. So now in Ois Hey, on page Yudaled, the Maimer is finally going to get back to the questions that we were asking at the beginning of the Maimer. One of the questions that we asked at the beginning of the Maimer was, why does he use an expression, who can count the number? He should have just said, there is no number. Why does he use the term, who can count the number, which means that there's a possibility, there's room, there's a havamina that there is a number, but we're just challenging that and said, who can count the number? So he says in Ois Hey, it doesn't just say straightforwardly, there's no number to Nafar Yaakov and the Roiva Yisrael. So the Rebbe goes on to say, the idea behind this is, concerning the dust on earth of Yaakov, Shekoy Allah mitzvahs is referring to mitzvah Shemekayim Ba'afar, like we see that the mitzvahs are fulfilled with the dust on the earth. Hare Adrab, just the opposite, that you cannot say that there has no number. You couldn't say ein mispar when it comes to mitzvahs. Why? Inyan ha-mitzvahs hu-b'midah, v'shir, hu-medida, v'tzimtzum. The mitzvahs has a measure, and it has a shear, and it has constricted. Before Begeras HaKodesh, I can explain the Geras HaKodesh. There's only 4 batim in tefillin. There's only 4 corners of the beged you put on the tzitzis, etc., etc. Every mitzvah has its measure. And in the number of mitzvahs, it's also limited. Ubechlolos, yesh taryag mitzvahs deraisa, v'shava mitzvahs derabanan. In general, there are 630 mitzvahs b'rat Torah, and the 7 mitzvahs derabanan. So therefore, he couldn't say, ein mispar la'afar Yaakov. There's no number to the mitzvahs of Yaakov, because that would not be correct. But he says instead, mimona afar Yaakov, because externally, it does have a limit. Every mitzvah is limited, and there's the amount of mitzvahs are limited. But then when we drill down closer, we see the unlimited aspect of it. So he says in line 9, for yesh this itself, there's the idea of alamas ein mispar. It says in Shashirim, it says different expressions over there, referring to different things. The Chazal say, Alamas ein mispar, that's the memness of the Amoraim, like we'll soon mentioned in the next paragraph. Hainu, what does that mean that there's Allah saying mispar here? Choilim lachadish b'zeh kam inyanim apratim adei mispar. That in the mitzvahs, though there's a certain limited amount of mitzvahs, only 613 mitzvah deraisa and 7 derabanan, and the mitzvahs, each one has its own limit, how and what they are performed. Still in all, one can always bring new insights and new reasons and new details to the mitzvahs which weren't there before. So the mitzvahs also have a nature of being without end. How come? How does that come about? If something is limited, how can something that's limited turn into something that's unlimited? That's because of the intermingling of the midos, shorish mitzvahs. The mitzvahs are rooted in the midos. In general, chesed is the root for all the mitzvahs aseh, gvura is the root for all the mitzvahs loisaseh, and because of the hiskalulus that there is between the different midos, and the same thing, v'chein hiskalulus. A mitzvah zum mizuv. There's also the intermingling of the mitzvahs, this from this and this from this, and because of their intermingling, it's possible to have an unlimited type of way of mitzvahs, because when you're dealing, and you could come up with new insights and so on, when you're dealing with just one thing, multiples of individual things, so then as many as you have. But then when you start dealing with combinations, the combinations are an infinite amount of combinations. So even though, let's say, there's only 613 mitzvahs, but how many combinations can you get from 613 mitzvahs? And that's where the infinite comes in, plus all the different reasons and insights and new applications and so on. So therefore, it's possible to reach a level of without count. So therefore, at the beginning, it uses a term, Valpiza, line 14, moving. It's understood there could be a Havamina, there's a number to how much dust of Yaakov is on mitzvah shemikayim buffer. You could think, mana, maybe, perhaps, you could count. Is abundance, but after thinking into it, so then the wonder awakens and says, who can count the dust of Yaakov? You see that this is impossible. You can't do this. Further, line 18 in the second paragraph on the page. That was the Bimana Afar Yaakov, who can count the number of the mitzvahs. What about the idea of the second part of the pasuk? Because of the pasuk continues on the number of the Roiva Yisrael that we said before. Roiva is going on the Koyal HaTorah. That's referring to Torah. So on the one hand, that Torah, though it is beyond the vision and details, it comes down also with the visions. Ubislabesh become a pratim, and the Torah becomes enclosed in many details and details of details. Till, like we said, these are the statements of the Ameroim. The Chazal say, "Our alamis ein mispar." There are no number. That in them the details of the mitzvahs are explained. Until it even includes that there's innumerable amounts and uncounted amounts of the chidushim that a diligent student can come up with, even though it was given on Moshe Har Sinai, like the whole phrase goes that but still, in all, what is the chiddush of the Talmud? If it was given already on Har Sinai, the chiddush of the Talmud is to reveal it. Became mechadish Talmud Vosik as a still in all, the diligent student is mechadish the revelation from the detail of the general principle. Before it's explained in many places how to reconcile the two ideas that the Talmud Vosik is mechadish, but it was something given to Moshe Sinai, that Moshe was given the klolim, and the Talmud Vosik is only bringing down the details. So the Rebbe goes on, last line on the page, similar to an explanation of Tzemach Tzedek with Mizber Tilma al Pasik. In the Mizber Tilma al Pasik, Hanoita Oizel Halo Yishma Im Yoitzer Ein Halo Yamit. Can it then be that someone that planted the ear, will he not hear? Someone that formed the eye, will he not see? In other words, the David HaMelech in Tehillim is saying that people that think that Hashem doesn't hear or see what I'm doing, they're being ridiculous. Hashem created the ear, Hashem created the eye. For sure he could hear, for sure he could see. So the Rebbe brings from the Tzemach Tzedek a similar question like we had before. How can we say there's no number? The same thing over here. How can we say that there's a number? The same thing over here. How can you even think this? The Lechura seemingly, how can it even be a possibility of someone thinking otherwise that Hashem doesn't hear or doesn't see? That you need to clarify. David HaMelech has to tell you and tell him, you should know, he made you the ear, obviously he could hear. He made the eye, obviously he could see. It should be very obvious and logical. Why would David HaMelech have to tell us this? But the idea behind this is there are those that complain that Havaya is exalted and higher over all the nations. Because the Eibishter is a pure and simple unity. He is not capable, and he does not want to lower himself to hear and to look. And the Pasuk comes to tell us, David HaMelech comes to tell us in Tehillim, since he is the one that formed the eye, and he is the one that planted the ear, that's understood from this. Though Hashem is a pure oneness, he's drawn down and comes down also to the details. So too, what we were talking about before about Hashem's Torah. The kivin since we know that Hashem is completely one, He is the knowledge itself, and He is the knower. Also, the Torah is in such a way of a pure unity, and therefore you might think that because it's a pure unity, it doesn't come down into details. Still in all, it's drawn down and comes below in details of the details.
Progress.
So we're holding the second paragraph on page Tesvav. This idea that a Torah, which is higher than division, it's a pure and non-complex unity, comes down also into the details. It affects an advantage, an elevation, also in the details of the details. Like, for example, the way Torah affects the fulfillment of mitzvahs. After there's the fulfillment of mitzvahs in a way of offer, like we said before. We will do Kabbalah soil. The Nishma, when it's added, also the idea of we will hear and understand. This is the general knowledge that's in the mitzvah, that's a result through Torah study to its depth and thoroughly. So then the action, the mnasa, the mitzvah is in a much higher way than if it didn't have the nishma following it. Since it has also the action, since it also has the study, that study brings to action. That's the advantage and quality through adding water, which is Torah, in the earth, which is mitzvahs. That through that comes about the number of the Roiva Yisrael, like we mentioned before at the end of Ois Daled, by you having both together. Like it's known also, what's explained in L'chutei Torah in the Mambarim of Matan Torah. Torah is likened to the blood that circulates in all the limbs and organs. In all the 248 different limbs and organs, it's the same blood that travels through it all. This means though the limbs and organs are differentiated, every limb and organ is something independent. The eye is meant to see and the ear to hear. And the blood gives life and vitality to every limb and organ individually for what it is about. Despite that unique aspect of every limb and the blood that comes to every limb, the blood also joins and unites the one limb with another limb because the blood is what circulates throughout the entire body. Until this circulation is what determines the health of all the limbs and organs of the body. Let's explain at the end of Geras HaKodesh, the Shechina is called the heart, top of page Zayin. Through the spreading and the traveling of the blood, the circulation of the blood with with oxygen in it, from the heart to all the limbs and organs of the entire body. And then afterwards, returning to the heart, then there is the person is completely healthy and perfect, etc. So the same thing, Torah is not something that's removed from the mitzvahs. Torah is something that comes down and impacts and adds to the health and vitality of the mitzvahs. So he's what he says by they close avodah being the far Ya'akov through the general avodah in the idea of the dust and the earth of Yaakov, v'roiva Yisrael. Hein offer v'roiva, both the dust and the water. Inyan ha-bittul, the idea of bittul, offer chakol durst, and all of like the dust that everybody's stepping on it. Shazel in the nasa, that's the idea of we will do. V'inyan ha-Torah, and the idea of Torah, which is roiva, mayim, water, and mayim ala-Torah, that water is going on Torah. V'hein Yaakov Yisrael, and also by doing the avodah of both Yaakov and Yisrael. Instead of the fact that he's in a state of Yaakov, that the Yud enters and descends into the level of the heel, the Yud being Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei and Chachma and Keser, but instead Harei Mailas Okev, the Yud elevates, then Hashem's name elevates the heel, until it becomes a head, Va'ad in the Li Roish, until it becomes that Hashem says it's to me a head, Yisrael Oisis Li Roish. Yisrael is the same letters like the word to me a head. So the Hashem Kaviyachal says that the Yidden become a head to the Eibishter Li Roish. They become to the Eibishter a head. Sharoish Nasa Boifin the Li, that the head becomes in the way to me. Shu Inyan Nitzchi Kidden Isa Medrash. It's an everlasting thing, like it's brought down the Medrash. Kol Mokum Shenemar Li, wherever it says to me, Ein Azazval Olam, it never moves. In other words, it's always there. It's an everlasting thing. So Yisrael Li Roish, it's an everlasting idea. Azai Magim La Ilu D'Shem Yisrael, K'vishanitten B'Pamashniya, Idea Kodesh Baruch Hu Kaniskel Elsiv Beis. So then we reach the advantage and the quality of the name Yisrael the way it was given the second time through Hashem Himself, like we mentioned in Ois Beis. V'hainu, this means Shenoisef L'Kviyat Shem Yisrael Idea Malch Mitzadein N'Sirisim Elkim HaNashim B'Tuchal, in addition to Yaakov being called Yisrael by the Malch, because he was overpowering mighty ones and men, and he was stronger than them. He was victorious over them. Shizel inyan akasher ma'avoda. That's something that's connected with avoda, because he overcame other forces. Yes, there's an even higher level in the calling of the name Yisrael. Through Hashem Himself, calling and revealing the Yisrael, the essential name. That we said before, Yisrael is like the essence and the core. Therefore they say, Yisrael, because Yisrael is the essence. That's why even if he sinned, he is called Yisrael. The dark the city though he doesn't find himself at all in a level of overcoming and being ruler over Elokim and Anoshim and being more powerful over them. The Adrab, it's the opposite. Shari Chata, he sinned. That shows that he is subservient to the Klippa and negative forces and so on. Afal Pikein, despite that, Hashem gives him this title that Yisrael, because there's the level of Yisrael, the way Hashem calls him Yisrael, that's beyond and regardless of the person's avodah. That is the idea of bringing down something that's higher than Seder Shtalshus in the worlds. Well, the Mailam Seder Shtalshus B'Koyach and higher than the chain order of descent in the powers of the person energy and strength and so on.
Recording